Grateful to be free. Her inability to stop smoking filled her with shame. She thought she would die a smoker. Freed from the compulsion, she has her self-esteem back. I really don't remember my first cigarette. All I remember is being a smoker by the time I was 17. At some point, someone must have indicated that they felt I was addicted, because I remember deliberately not smoking for a day and smugly feeling that it wasn't really addiction. Rather, it was something I chose to do. I left for college and never gave it another thought. A few years later, I had a throat infection and couldn't smoke for a week. My boyfriend at the time promised me a big reward if I would make it without smoking for a month. I couldn't make it and realized that I was dealing with something that wasn't going to go away because I said so, and I may not be able to just stop any time I wanted. There were repeated attempts to stop throughout the 16 years of my smoking, and I would only get a couple of days or a few weeks together and not be able to go on. It became so much work to stop that often planning, promising, counting, fighting with my conscience, and negotiating with my addiction. I was never able to stay stopped and always felt ashamed and embarrassed with my friends and family, but worst of all, I always felt like a failure to myself. Nicotine certainly is the progressive disease they say it is, because the pattern is always the same. First it would be just a puff or two. Then when that wouldn't do, I'd grub a cigarette or two off of my friends, or strangers if need be. Feeling guilty for taking someone else's smokes, I'd buy my own pack, have a few and throw the rest out, or have someone else hold them for me. That might suffice for a week, so I'd leave the pack in my car, running out to have a cigarette and assuring myself that this was the way I wouldn't exceed my designated allotment. I always managed to rationalize my feelings enough to be back to smoking 2 packs a day in a very short time, conveniently forgetting all the shame I had endured. I've heard people share horror stories as their motivation to stop smoking. I thank God that my life has never been touched by any cancer, emphysema, or smoking-related illness, but because of this, I was immortal. I loved to smoke. I could sit and relax for hours with my cigarettes, a pot of coffee, and the Sunday Times. Smoking was a time out for me. No matter what was happening to me, I could find the time to stop the world for a few minutes and smoke. I could handle anything with a cigarette in my hand. Oh, but how my addiction grabbed hold of me. I can't believe the excuses I came up with to continue smoking. The reason I was out of breath and had no endurance? I didn't exercise. My breath, clothes, and the rest of my environment smelled bad? Well, smoking is not such a bad vice. I could be gambling, lying, cheating, or stealing. Die from smoking? I could be hit by a bus just as easily. At least I'm not altering my consciousness. That 2-week cough, it's from congestion. If the house smells bad, we'll air it out. If I burned it, I'll fix it or replace it. If you won't have me with my cigarettes, you won't have me without. I continued smoking through my life, always feeling shameful and different. Everyone else could stop smoking, but I guessed I would be one of those people who would die a smoker. So many people nagged me, it seemed that everyone was stopping. How come I could be so successful in many ways, but I had no power over a little thing like cigarettes? Then one day it happened. I felt the courage to pick a new date. I had done this so many times before. Could I make this one stick? I had failed every other time, but I had to try one more time. On the night before my quit date, I had this is my last cigarette ceremony. Just before I went to sleep, I had a number of cigarettes in a row, and then I had my last one. I went to the sink, soaked the remainder of the pack, and went to sleep. My withdrawal? It was typical but awful. The first 3 days I felt like a ghost. I couldn't focus my mind and had no control over my body. I craved a cigarette so badly I ached and I cried. I was irritable and emotional. It seemed that every cell of my body hurt. For weeks I was ready to burst into tears at the drop of a hat. My friends at work wanted to tie me down and force me to smoke. I was fighting incessantly with my very supportive boyfriend. I don't think I had a good night's sleep for 2 months. I tossed and turned throughout the night, getting up every 2 or 3 hours, unable to sleep. During this dreaded time of transition, it took all my energy to beat down the demon within me. I felt like my soul was ripped apart and was in shreds before me. I could do nothing but dedicate every waking moment to not taking that first drag. Even during sleep, I'd be fighting dreams where I'd have smoked an entire pack. My addiction took on a persona that had become the enemy. It tried every trick in the book to make me take that first puff. I would dream that I had had a cigarette, and when that wouldn't work, I would dream I smoked the whole pack. My eyes would find the only smoker in a crowd and would find the cigarette that landed untouched on the ground from someone else's pack. It seems that I never knew how many smokers there were in the world until I was trying not to be one. I held on for dear life and prayed for strength. 2 weeks later, I found Nicotine Anonymous and never felt more at home as I did when I walked in the room. I found the only people in the world who understood what I was feeling, as well as strength and hope to carry on fighting the demons within me. How do I stay sober? Without my Nicotine Anonymous meetings, I couldn't do it. I need the support of my group, a higher power, and the program to remind me what I'm grateful for. I tried all the tools we learned about, including deep breathing, drinking water, taking walks, making phone calls. There are times when all else fails that I need to visualize Gail's, Rob's, or Jim's face or hear their voices to keep me honest. It's amazing how I would do for someone else what I wouldn't do for myself. I must struggle to never lose sight of the fact that I'm merely one cigarette away from having it all back. As I've been constantly reminded, one is too many and 1,000 is not enough. But what is so easy to be thankful for? My freedom. The easiest things to celebrate freedom from are the most tangible. I notice the absence of a stale odor wherever cigarette smoke touched, my breath, hair, clothes, car, and home. I am no longer held captive by my addiction, telling me where I will sit, when I will go, and with whom I'll be friends. My dentist is thrilled by the absence of stains on my teeth and the health of my gums. There are no more burns on my upholstery, bedding, clothes, or fingers. There is no shortness of breath or pounding in my chest when running for a train or playing a game of racquetball. The windows of my car and home do not have a yellow film on them. My office is no longer under a cloud of smoke. My skin no longer has that gray pallor that only toxic poisons could cause. No longer am I exhausted after a normal day's work. It is hard to forget about these things, as most smokers can't hide these telltale signs as much as they think they can. What I must keep fresh and not lose sight of are the non-tangibles. I don't have the humiliation of watching a mouth being rinsed out after a special kiss, or the debilitating feeling of being a failure every time I lit a cigarette. I must not forget the resentment I carried when I had to be inconvenienced and banished to smoke outdoors when in a non-smoking home. I am no longer posing a health hazard to my possible future children having to be born addicted with poisons in their systems. No longer do I have to sabotage all of my attempts at good health and longevity, expecting that a good diet and vitamins will offset the effects of smoking. I have gained my sense of choice back. I do not have to make decisions trying to accommodate the craving for nicotine. But the greatest gift I have received is the return of my self-esteem. After lying to myself and to God every night, I finally feel unburdened, like I'm not hiding anything shameful. I have been able to restore enough sanity to my life to be able to look at putting down my cigarettes as embarking on a journey. It has been a rough trip, painful at times, because I chose to look at why I was craving each cigarette, taking a long look at the triggering emotions. I've learned so much. It's been a long road, but I can even say that I've learned to like myself, and I like who I've allowed myself to become. I've even let someone wonderful in my life to love me, which never could have happened if I had continued smoking. I do believe my higher power has rewarded me for accepting my addiction and growing through it. Life does look great on this side of the fence.